Hello everyone and welcome to our Meet the Employer this week. We have a really exciting lineup for you all today. I'm Rosa B and I just wanted to thank our BSL and our caption people who are along here today to help us. But before I introduce you to meet the employer and to our panelists, I just wanted to let you know that this has been recorded. You are not, but myself and the panelists will be. And this will actually be placed on our Hive, which is a 24/7 careers resource tool that you can use. So if you want to see this recording again, please do so. It will be available on the Hive in the next 3 days. This is an interactive event, so we do welcome your questions. We will have the chat box open, so please feel free to ask any of our panelists any questions that you want, or you can even share some of your experiences. There will be a formal Q&A session at the end, and we might also have a poll that we would like you to complete. We really do value your feedback. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce you to Unilever, and we have Jenny, Mark and Alex with us today. Welcome all, and thank you very much for coming along to Even Breaks Meet the Employer. How are you all?
Yeah, real good. Thank you, Rosa.
Fantastic. What we're going to do, I thought what we could start off by doing is if you would like to introduce yourself individually, what your role is at Unilever and why it's important for you to be here today. Jenny, let's start with you.
Hi, my name's Dr. Jenny Popel. I work at Unilever. I'm actually a research scientist and I'm based at the Colworth Research Park, which is just north of Bedford. I'm also very actively involved in the Disability Network, and it's a real privilege to be here today because I'm very passionate about disability and making sure we have a really inclusive environment at Unilever. So thank you for the invitation.
You are welcome. What an interesting role that is. A research scientist. We might want to find out a little bit more about that later on. Mark, you're up next. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your role and why it's important for you to be here today?
Absolutely, thanks, Rosa. So yes, my name is Mark Rothwell. I'm one of the talent managers in the UK, being responsible for recruiting research and development professionals at our 3 sites. I'm based in the Northwest. And in terms of why this is important to me, ensuring that we've got an inclusive recruitment practice and being partnered with companies and organisations like Evenbreak is something that I feel will help us attract the best possible talent to Unilever. And so, yeah, running events like this and being a part of it is it's a privilege to be a part of.
Fantastic. I know that we will have a lot of questions from our candidates at Evenbreak that we will want to ask you today. So we also have, is it Mark that's up next?
I think it might be me. I'm Alex.
Alex, my apologies.
That's okay.
Tell us a little bit about your role and also why it's important for you to be here today.
So my name's Alex, as I said. I work in category management at Unilever, looking after the food business with one of our big retail partners, Asda. So a really exciting role. To echo Jenny and Mark, what they've both said already, and for me, really, having a disability shouldn't be a barrier to getting into the workplace, and especially working somewhere like Unilever. So it's really important for me to be here and help show what it is like working for a company at Unilever,
Okay, shall we get started, everyone? We've got some very interesting questions. Let's start with why it's important to hire people with disabilities. So I want to set this to Mark. Mark, why is hiring people with disabilities important to you, but also important to Unilever?
So Rosa, I think there's so much data and evidence out there that diverse organisations and diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams, that really we don't need to get into that. It could almost be labelled a fact, really. So I'm not going to repeat that and talk about what everyone already knows. When it comes to Unilever, though, ultimately we want to hire amazing people to come and bring them their best self to work. And when you look at things like the employment rate for people with disabilities versus non-disabilities in the UK, it's something like 52% versus 81%. And so to me, that means that there are large amounts of talent out there that could contribute to Unilever and our purpose and our mission that aren't currently in work, and that we want to make sure that we're presenting those opportunities to those people to make sure that ultimately we're hiring the best possible people that are out there. And when you think about Unilever as an organisation, we've got about 150,000 employees globally, about 6,000 of those in the UK. And given that we've already got large numbers of our population, our employee population with disabilities, we want to make sure that they feel included, supported, and that they're not being marginalised or affected by our recruitment practices. So as a final point as well, we serve about 2.5 billion customers on a daily basis, many of whom will be people with disabilities. And having that representation within Unilever will help us produce better products for our customers. And that's something that Jenny, I know, will talk about a little bit later on in the webinar. So overall, it's morally the right thing to do. We've got the support from our CEO in Alan Job, and he's actually set us a target to be the #1 employer of choice for people with disabilities by 2025. And so, yeah, in summary, when it comes to why hiring people with disabilities is important to Unilever, yeah, it's the right thing to do. And hopefully through the course of today's webinar, you'll get a good picture of why we're doing that and how we're doing that.
Fantastic. Are you able to share with me what percentage of people currently within Unilever, because you did actually give me a stat about how many people are employed globally, but do you have a stat on how many people have a disability that are employed in Unilever?
I don't have that to hand, actually. I don't know whether Jenny or Alex does.
No, it's quite a challenge, I think, as well, in terms of people self-declaring and feel comfortable. So I know it's something we're definitely looking at, and I think the culture we're trying to develop means that people feel comfortable and confident where they want to disclose. So I think at the moment, yes, it can be a challenge for us to put an exact number on that.
Yeah, and Jenny, you're absolutely spot on. There's probably a lot more of us working in organisations that may not even be aware we have a disability or a neurodiversity, or simply don't want to share it because of stigma and whatnot. But my understanding is that you all have a disability or a health condition that Unilever supports you with. How comfortable are you in sharing your individual stories with us today? Jenny, let's start with you.
Yeah, and I'm completely comfortable, and I don't mind any questions in the chat. It's absolutely fine. So I joined Unilever a long time ago, about 18 years ago, and actually I acquired my disability about 10 years ago. So I was already in the organisation when I acquired that disability, and for me, it was a really big life change. It was, quite a sort of, I guess, a disorientating experience when you're used to being able to do things, and then suddenly that becomes difficult. So my condition I have, it's quite a rare neurological condition that if I tell people, they've never heard of it. And so it affects me in sort of multiple different ways. So I do have to spend a lot of time laying down, which is quite a bit strange to people, and it also affects things like my hearing and vision, and I get quite tired quite a lot. And it can affect how sort of my cognition, I call it, how quickly I can think. So I have to be quite good at managing various different things to do with that. But yeah, so I've had my condition, and it does fluctuate quite a lot, which I think brings its own challenges as well. So it's not static; it sort of gets worse and then better for a bit and worse. And so yeah, it can be a bit of a day-to-day challenge.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. But I'm sure that you overcome those challenges, Jenny. Do you want to share a little with us about, what your strengths are and how you overcome those challenges to be able to thrive in your world of work?
Yeah, and actually, as an industry I work in, there's not a huge amount of, if you go to scientific conferences, you don't see a great representation of people with disabilities, I have to be honest, or, physical, visible disabilities. So it's not, and that's, again, I'm quite passionate about being involved with. But I've had some great adaptations, but in my workplace, the thing that probably makes the biggest difference for me, though, is the attitude and awareness of the colleagues I work with. So that understanding and the small little things that they can do day to day, which just make things so much easier. And they can be incredibly small, like, can we just use that meeting room just there because it's not very far away? And, you know, to normal people, or I say normal people, people without disabilities, you know, they're just not aware. But like I say, my colleagues are so understanding and supportive that is probably one of the things that makes the biggest difference day to day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Jenny. Alex, what about you?
Sure. So I joined the company about 5 years ago. It's coming up to 5 years ago. I have a plethora of issues. I mean, let's start with the physical ones. So I have a couple of conditions. One of them is called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. The other one is postural tachycardia syndrome. And like Jenny, sometimes I have to spend a lot of time horizontal, depending on how I'm feeling. But for me, I'm in a really fortunate position at this point where the physical impact of my conditions is less regular. So I find that on a daily basis, I'm normally pretty okay. And this is, I think, you know, EDS gets grouped into one of the invisible disabilities, because when you look at someone, they can strike you as just being a fairly normal and healthy person, when in actual fact, the prospect of doing something as simple as walking up a flight of stairs can be quite a daunting task for me. The business, and I should probably say actually more specifically, my line managers that I've had whilst I've been here have all been very sort of, I guess, welcoming could be the right word. They take the time to understand my conditions. They take the time to understand the impact and trust that if I say I'm not feeling too well, that is the case. And they never once have doubted that statement or thought that perhaps it was a self-inflicted not feeling too well. I also, when I came into the business, you have a assessment with, I've forgotten the name of the team. I always forget the name of the team, but I had an assessment where they talked me through what could be made available to me if needed, reasonable adjustments, I think we call it. More recently, linking into my dyslexia, I have had another assessment to look at software that could be made available to help, especially now that with the move to working from home and 100% of our work being computer-based rather than sort of office-based in meetings face-to-face, I did really struggle with using my laptop all of the time. I find it really difficult to be constantly reading things off a screen. And also now we're coming back into the office, funnily enough, I've really struggled. You can see I'm sat here with headphones on. I do find too much noise a little bit overwhelming. So my team are very accepting of the fact that I tend to sit in the office with noise cancelling headphones on so that I can't get too distracted all the time. I know we're not necessarily jumping to the questions just yet, but I noticed that Aidan has put a question on there about neurodivergent and neurodivergent people and the lived reality. I would say I definitely am neurodivergent, and my lived reality is that being in a very sort of upbeat and noisy environment in the office can be really difficult, and the individual managers do tend to take the time to understand your needs. So on a day when I am getting overwhelmed by it being too noisy in the office, they're quite happy for me to take myself off and find a quiet space to work, and those quiet spaces are available. So it's not frowned upon because you don't want to constantly be around a noisy team. So it's not fair to say that everyone is understanding and everyone is knowledgeable, but there's definitely an attitude of learning here and wanting to learn and understand how a manager can improve the day-to-day lived experience of their teams.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Alex. You know, I also have dyslexia, and I hear you. I hear you on the distractibility end of things. And I also have ADHD too. And so ADHDers can get distracted anyway, you know. But I really do want to thank you for sharing so elegantly, you know, how your condition does impact you. But we know that dyslexics have some amazing creative strengths, don't they? So what I'd like to do now is go over to you, Mark. Mark, would you like to share with us?
Yeah, happy to share, and thank you for asking. So I'm about 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a long-term health, chronic health condition. At that time, and I'll try and take the question maybe at a slightly different angle, if it's okay, Rosa, because I'm quite fortunate that the kind of symptoms and kind of manageability of my disease is in a good place at the moment. So actually, aside from kind of needing time off for kind of blood tests and hospital appointments and checkups and things like that to try and manage my disease, I'm actually in a good place and haven't required a huge amount of adjustment in terms of my actual workplace. What I will say though is I was very fortunate that the employers that I had before coming to Unilever were incredibly supportive of that. And you hear stories from other organisations and other friends and people that maybe other companies aren't maybe that supportive. And so when it came to the decision and I had the offer from Unilever to say, do you want to come and join Unilever? I feel it where my kind of unique perspective was brought to is, well, actually, because I'm in a good place, because my current employer actually is very supportive, do I want to take the risk and go to a new employer that maybe won't be as supportive? And actually, as part of my interview process, I had a very full and frank conversation with my prospective line manager just to explain what I need, what support I've had in the past, what the worst case scenario looks like as well, that, depending on where, if a flare up takes place. And actually what that conversation was very positive. They gave me the confidence that Unilever would recognise where, my situation and what was, what I go through. And then actually in practice then, since coming to Unilever, they have delivered on that. And my line manager, Jamie, has been amazing in terms of, saying, right, I've got an appointment with the hospital, I need to go. And, also, I'll spare people the details, but from time to time, I may need to leave a meeting at a moment's notice. And yeah, there's never been any sort of question, any sort of issue when kind of in that situation. And so, yeah, the actual practice has been put into place, as well as actually the conversation before joining Unilever.
Thank you so much for sharing. What a diversity of disability and conditions we have here right in front of us. And I think we also had Brandon who shared, Brandon, thank you for sharing this, as cerebral palsy, and finds it challenging to find the work. And so what we might do more, because we might talk to that a little bit later, but it's just really wonderful to hear all of your stories and we can share it so openly, right? What I'd like to do is move on to Enabled Employees Network. We know how important it is to have an employees network. And so you have Enabled Employees Network within Unilever. What is it? How does it work? And tell us its impact. And that is going to go to Jenny. Jenny, can you share with us, please?
Yeah, I'm going to apologise first because I think we've got some workmen in my meeting room. So if there's drinks, I do apologise. I might have to move quite quickly, but I will plough on regardless. So yeah, our Enabled Network is our global employee network group, and it's for any employees with disabilities, but also allies. So everybody is welcome to join. You don't have to have a disability. We also have local networks as well in the different geographies. So we have one in the UK, we have one in Turkey, one in the US. I won't name them all, but why that is important as well is there can be very different challenges for employees with disabilities in different parts of the globe. And myself, certainly being part of that network, it's really opened my eyes as to lived experiences of other people with disabilities who live in different countries. Maybe you take for granted some of the laws and expectations that you experience as someone with a disability in the UK, and it can be very different for other people. So the network, we don't just sit around and talk. We have a sort of team site where we can share information, we can share tips and webinars or any sort of training. People can ask for advice if they're looking for help with anything. But the thing that I really enjoy about it most, that I find is fantastic, is we have a number of activities that we all volunteer for in addition to our day jobs. So I have my normal day job, but I do bits for the Enabled Network. And that can cover a really broad range of activities. So it's looking at things like talent and recruitment. Are our processes fit for purpose? And our experiences as employees with disabilities, we obviously bring that lived experience of what it's really like. We also have a very active participation in looking at inclusion of our policies and practices, but also our products and services. So we want to make sure that the products we're designing and using and you know, we're selling to people, that they're accessible to everybody. And so again, not everybody is experienced or understands what it can be like living with a disability. So helping colleagues who work in other parts of the business, so maybe more to do with producing products, producing packaging, they can come to that network and say, we'd like some experience, or can anybody help us? And I find it a really positive experience to be part of that network. Not only do I feel like I'm actually making a difference to our as a business, we're making sure we are inclusive, both internally and externally with what we're doing. But also, I've learned a huge amount about people's experiences with very different types of other disabilities that I would never have realised for what their experience is like, and some of the other challenges that they have day to day. So I think it's made me a lot more empathetic and aware of other types of, you know, conditions and disabilities, and just to be mindful that anybody in the office I work with potentially could have a disability and I might not know. So I think I'm a bit more tuned in now and aware. I think you become a bit less judgmental of people as well. So like I say, I love the networks. I think they're great. They're very positive places and really give you a home to sort of invest in some change and making sure, you know, what we're doing is good as a business.
This is fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And the work that you do really does have impact, right, Jenny? Because you mentioned earlier about how you get to review recruitment hiring practices and processes, because you've all got lived experiences. You've all gone through it. And then is that fed back to management, you know, to people like Mark, so that they can make those improvements?
Yeah, Mark, would you like to answer that sort of question? I think we just have a very diverse knowledge base, and maybe awareness of the types of tools people with disabilities may use. So things like screen readers and, you know, the format of our digital, we do have standards and we do have expectations that those are being met. But I think sometimes people, and it's just through lack of knowledge and awareness, that they may be, you know, don't know, well, this is the experience of a person. So it's making sure that diversity of disability is, we try and present that. So Mark, I don't know whether you've got any other comments you'd like to add.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I've been with Unilever for just less than a year now, but just even through that time, we've made several adjustments to our job advertisements, including the wording and making sure that people are aware that they have the opportunity to make a reasonable adjustment request from the application process on. And I think that came from the Enable network. One of my colleagues within Talent is also heavily involved within Enable, and she brings lots of ideas to the table in terms of how we can structure our application process, our assessment processes as well. So definitely that feedback comes back to us in Talent. And yeah, just from my own visibility, I know that there's been various other discussions taking place with other leaders across the organisation. I think what's been really nice to see over the 9 months that I've been here is actually this isn't just being driven by the Enable network, it's being driven by the leaders within Unilever. I mentioned Alan's objective earlier, but also we are noticing that hiring managers are coming to us with ideas for accessibility, for ideas within their application process as well. So yeah, not just within Enable, and they do some amazing work, but it is very much becoming a culture within the business as well.
Thank you. It sort of leads us on nicely to the next question, you know, about adaptations. You know, what adaptations has Unilever made to support you in your roles, and how is your unique perspective valued by Unilever? That's an incredible question, isn't it? Who would like to answer that? Could we start with perhaps Alex this time?
Sure. So within my role, adaptations, I think it's not necessarily a me specific situation, but a lot of businesses talk about flexible working. I think flexible working means different things to different companies, but it's something that I think Unilever really has got right. If you are the sort of person who, for example, works best in the morning, then logging on at sort of 7:30, 8 o'clock and finishing at 4 o'clock rather than working on till 5, 6 is certainly doable. If you find that you need a longer break at lunchtime because you're a bit more tired and want to use that time to rest, then that's also a given. So we have set working hours, and the business obviously has a sort of core time that they'd like you to be online and working, but it is within your capacity to take the time that you need to do the job to the best of your ability. So with that as well, if you have doctor's appointments, you're not necessarily expected to book half a day's leave to go and do a doctor's appointment, and you work through all of that with your manager. So if I have a sort of flurry of appointments that I need to go to, I just sit down with my manager, talk through all of them and put them in the diary. There's never been an expectation on me to have to use personal holiday leave to go and do those appointments. Also, in terms of actual tech, as I touched on earlier, I'm still going through the process at the moment, but it's been a fairly straightforward process. They're just deciding which bit of tech's going to be best suitable for me to load onto my computer, and that's all done centrally. So I'm not having to fund any of that. And once a decision gets made as to what's going to suit me best, it will just get installed on my computer overnight. So one day I'll wake up and it'll just appear. So those are, there is a lot more available, but that's what is immediately impacting me. And I think that my perspective is probably valued in that, as Jenny touched on earlier, we talked about not knowing how many people at the business have a disability. And I think one of the biggest things that's come out of it is even I don't identify as having a disability. If someone said to me, right, tick box form, are you disabled, yes or no? I would go no, because I have this thought process that I'm not very disabled, and there are people who are far more impacted by their disabilities than I am. So I don't want to necessarily put my hand up and go, oh yeah, I fit that mold as well. And I think that's been one of the bigger learnings and the biggest opinions, I suppose, that has come out of these discussions that I've had, because it's been that moment where people have sat up and gone, aha, of course, it's not necessarily a black box that everyone fits into. It's a bit of a grey area. So I think that opinion has been valued.
So I just wanted to agree with that. The use of language is really important, and how we want to be, how we want to describe our conditions, etc. So that's a really, really valid point that you bring across, Alex. Mark, what about you? Tell us about, what sort of adaptations you've needed in your world of work.
Absolutely. And just to echo what Alex was saying beforehand, with having Crohn's disease and wanting to kind of stay on top of my condition, that means going for regular blood tests. So every couple of months I go for blood tests. I have doctor's appointment every 3 months. I have kind of biannual checkups as well. And so with that, it's been granted just without a second thought. I will call my line manager up, explain the situation, and no need for annual leave. She has the trust in me, which I think is the important thing to be able to perform my duties and to work despite everything that's going on from time to time. So that's been the main adaptation that I've needed. And I think, picking up on what you mentioned before, Rosa, about how my unique perspective is valued, I think the lived experience that I went through kind of 11 years ago and the impact that had on my life has definitely made me more aware of the recruitment processes that we put in place, of giving him, future talent that confidence and that ability to trust in the employer that they're going to go and choose. And so I think that's where this relationship with Even Break has started to develop through things that we're doing with the Business Disability Forum as well. And some of those work that that Jenny was touching on in Enable, trying to emphasize that and bring that into, you know, our talent and recruitment processes is definitely where I feel that I'm adding value, and where that experience that I have had is making an impact on our ability to bring in people to Unilever.
Fantastic. And Jenny, what about you? Because you very vividly described your condition earlier on in this webinar, and you mentioned that there were moments where you just needed to lie down, right?
Yeah.
So how have you been helped and supported?
Yeah, I've had some great adaptations, and I think some people's perception is sometimes it's the physical things like a chair, but for me there's a lot of more subtle adaptations that I think Mark really touched on very well. So yeah, so I've had great support across a number of areas for adaptation. So one thing that was quite tricky for us was to find the adaptations that worked for me, because the condition is quite rare and you're not really designed to be laying down a lot of working as well. So actually that was quite a challenge to actually find what would work in an office environment as well. So I've got a great, it's called a zero gravity chair and workstation set up here. It's actually the room I'm in at the moment, but I'm just using a different desk in here. Yeah, so that's basically a chair that enables me to lay down. I've got a big screen at the top of the room. So I've got wireless connectivity to my computer. So obviously you could use things like dictation as well. So when I need to, at any point during the day, I can listen to meetings, I can join meetings that way. So it's great. That's one adaptation. And Unilever supported me in obtaining that. So I got it through an access to work. I have to be honest, I didn't know much about at the start, but yeah, they supported me. The equipment's all here and I can access it. It's in a room on its own, so I can come and go whenever I need to, use it for an hour, use it all day. Some days I don't need it. So yeah, it's that flexibility. So that's one very tangible. I think it's equipment, but there's a lot more subtle things, adaptations that I've had that I think a lot, I call them softer things. So if I take one example, if I need to go to a meeting at another site, traveling can be incredibly difficult for me. So some days I feel like I can travel. I can go through periods of time where that is just not physically possible. So at Unilever, we're very set up. This was even prior to the pandemic, to join meetings virtually. So if I say to my colleagues, at the moment, I really can't join in person, but can you set up? And they're always very mindful that if I'm joining virtually, that I'm included. And that just takes the pressure off me a bit. I'm not thinking, oh, I've got to go. You really don't want to. And even if I do need to travel, for example, it's simple things like my colleagues, they maybe could travel in the morning, go to a meeting, come home, but that wouldn't be possible for me. So I talked to my program director, line manager, and say, well, could I go the night before, have a rest, join in the morning, maybe stay the night after and then come back? And so it's little subtle things like that. Yeah, it costs a bit extra, but there's small things in the big scheme that really help me to feel comfortable and relaxed. Then I'm not thinking, oh, I've got to do this and I'm going to be exhausted and I really don't want to. And like I say, little things, flexible working has been hugely helpful to me as well, again, before the pandemic. So sometimes I will come into the office for a few hours. I live very locally, which is handy. By sort of early afternoon, I'm starting to struggle. And so I would come in for a set number of hours, then I'd go home and I'd work at home. I've got another setup there as well. So, and sometimes just the quiet and it's a bit less busy and it's less far to walk to the bathroom, coffee at home and little things like that. So they've always been brilliant about that sort of flexibility in terms of adjusting how I work and where I work. And like Mark was explaining, I've also had periods where I've been very unwell, and that transition back into the office can feel a bit like a mountain to climb. You're thinking, oh, just in option, like all the day-to-day things, it feels just overwhelming. You're thinking, I don't think I could go into the office and do like loads of hours and that. So
yes,
often what I've done is had a more gradual transition back. So I don't very often have had periods where I have been unwell for a while, but what happens then is sometimes I'll probably work at home for a number of days, and then we gradually build up to, coming in one day a week, a couple of days a week, and it's that process that you're trusted. As Mark said, it's a trust thing. It's that it's always a sort of negotiation with your line manager and program director that you're doing the role that, you know, you're fulfilling, but it's knowing that, yeah, it's okay to work at home for a little while, you know, the world doesn't fall apart, and then as things, you know, if I'm having a better time, I can come in more regularly, and it just takes the pressure off as well. You don't feel like you're having to do, you know, something that's really beyond your means. So subtle like that, like I say, just small things about colleagues. If I say, well, can we just meet down here, and if we organise like a team event, I'll say to the secretary, can you just do it in a room in our building, because I haven't got to. And so little things, and like I say, it can be very small, soft, subtle things. But yeah, so there are a few of the adaptations I can kind of think of, I think.
Fantastic. You know, this is a different Meet the Employer today, because we're focusing on things such as diversity, inclusion, sharing your neurodiversity or your disability or short or long-term mental health or physical health condition. And we're also talking about, you know, adjustments. One of the things that we notice as coaches in Even Break is that the people that we coach are not 100% sure how, when, where, and what to ask for. So this is a really big conversation we're having today. So I want everyone who's listening and watching today to get on the chat and even share your own experiences. How insightful are you finding this webinar so far? What experiences have you had when it comes to working with colleagues, to the adaptations or adjustments that you may need in your world of work? We'd really love to hear your experiences too. And so what I want to do is I want to move on. This is a question, I suppose, for you, Jenny. So tell us, can disabled colleagues help bring more diversity to your Unilever products, even when it's not directly related to their work?
Yeah, and it's something I've been doing probably in the last 18 months that I became involved with through the Enable Network, and I absolutely love, because I've learned a lot about a different area of the business that I've not really been involved in at all. So actually for me, it's a bit selfish. I learned quite a bit as well. So that's been great, just to build my skills and also networks, but also to bring my unique perspective, but also to meet other colleagues with different disabilities and different types of disabilities. So we have connections with some parts of the business where either they have a specific project where they're looking at inclusion of their particular products or services, and they want some advice and guidance. And often the way we do it is they come to us, they talk about what their project is, they explain, and they really listen to us and they take on board our feedback. So I did one recently, I found it fascinating. So one part of our business is to do with food, which we produce food products. And I have challenges at home with cooking and shopping, and I think quite a lot of people with disabilities do. And they wanted to learn more about the experiences and the challenges we had in terms of shopping and cooking and our habits, and how we might then be sort of maybe different consumers that they're just not aware of, that we may use their products differently, or we may have challenges using those products. So how are they designing them and how are they using them? And often with products Unilever develops, there's a lot of competing challenges that come with it. You know, we always care about the environment, that our products are sustainable, that, you know, there's issues, environmental issues like plastic and everything. So sometimes there's a lot of components that have to come together for us to design really great products that people use. And inclusion is one element of that. It's no good as making a fantastically environmentally and sustainably brilliant product if me as a consumer with a disability, I look and think, well, I'd love to buy that, but I can't open the lid, or I can't pick it up. Or so for us, what we do in a way is we just expert guidance for them. They come to us, they say, we're looking at this type of packaging, or, you know, we're thinking of using this sort. How would that work? Do you like that? And sometimes I think it can be quite subtle things that even people with disabilities think, really don't like that. It's just screaming, I'm a special, or, you know. And so it's all about inclusion across all areas. So sometimes we do have very niche products that we're designing specifically with inclusion in mind, but other times there's a lot going on in the background that's much more just thinking about inclusion in mind when we're designing our products. There may be people just don't realise even when they're shopping, or the process is going on as well.
Sure. And it's really important that everyone feels included and valued, and everybody has feedback and input that they can offer, right, Jenny?
Yeah, it's definitely the case. And it's also thinking about we're serving this very broad spectrum of global consumers. So we want as many people as absolutely possible to be using our products and enjoying them and getting benefit from them. So we need to be aware of the diversity of that population of consumers and making sure what we are designing is what people really want and want to use, and is easy for them to use, because otherwise, they're fickle like me. If you don't think something's working for you, so you'll go and buy something else that does. And so it's a really important part. I've loved being involved. Like I say, it feels like I'm bringing my lived experience and expertise that it can be bugbears for me, or frustrations that you think, oh, that supermarket experience, this is not great. And you put up with things, don't you, as a person with a disability? You think, oh, this is annoying, but I've got no other choice. Whereas we're trying to, change that mindset that things are in really for everybody. So, I've loved it. Like I say, it's been great to be involved in that.
Yeah, and well done, Jenny, for all that work. Before we go to the video, I need to ask one question on behalf of Aidan, because we do have 4 questions in the Q&A. If a neurodivergent person was appointed to a role, how can you be sure their line manager can deal with the lived reality of having a neurodivergent team member and all their quirks, and that all this talk of inclusion isn't just talking the talk? I think that one needs to go to Mark.
Yeah, absolutely, and happy to take this question. And look, I think Alex, talked about her lived experience at Unilever earlier, and what I would hope is that was the commonplace. So, in the event that we have a hire within a team, that what happens at the first stage is that they would have an occupational health assessment. Occupational health will then provide recommendations to the line manager of that individual, and there will be a range of different guidance that they would provide from that perspective. There's also a range of different pathways within our learning tool called Degreed, that will support and guide and help any line manager within with people managing people with disabilities. Including how to discuss that, how to create an open environment where we can really listen to the individual and make sure that we're taking into consideration the accommodations that we need to provide to allow that person to give their best self at work. So that's the way that it will be done. We also have a diversity and inclusion lead, who again keeps up to date, is well aware of the requests, what's going on within Unilever, how we can support line management, and then through the Enable network as well that Jenny mentioned, there's a number of different people there that can provide support to that line manager as well. I don't want to turn around and say that we're absolutely perfect at it. We are not. There's a long way for us to go, but there's a lot of different support that's out there and available to our managers. And we want to make sure that we're giving those people the best opportunity to support the individuals within their team and all their individual quirks, to use Alex's term, that everyone has that we want to support.
And it's everyone's responsibility, isn't it? It's our responsibility as employees to self-advocate. It's also the organisation's responsibility to make sure there's diversity and inclusion, and also line managers' responsibility to get to know who that person is that they're working with and how they can best be supported. So thank you for sharing that. I think
Rosa, sorry to interrupt you. Could I just, I wanted to add something to that as well.
Sure.
I think you touched on it then. It is really important to self-advocate. I think the best way you can help a line manager in understanding your needs is to express them, and sometimes it might be a very difficult conversation, but even something as simple as feedback, some people prefer feedback to be a bit softer and to be delivered in a sort of very kind and warm way, whereas, for example, I'm the sort of person that I need it to be quite direct and very explicit, because if you use fanciful words, I won't understand what you're asking me to do. So I've had that conversation with my manager, for example, to say to him, if I've done something wrong, just tell me and tell me what I need to do it right. And he's learned that he has to be very direct with me for me to understand what the feedback is saying, for example. So I think to self-advocate and be able to have those conversations as well is only going to help improve and move those relationships forward.
Thank you. That's another excellent point, Alex. Everyone is different in terms of how they want to receive their feedback. Some of us are highly sensitive people, and so therefore it may need to be approached a little more delicately. And then some of us are actually a little bit more direct and just want the information and just want it kind of in a very punchy, direct way. So I do appreciate that. I suppose it's about understanding, again, everyone's learning styles, their work styles, and how they want to receive that feedback. What I'd like to do, because I think there's about another 5 questions, so lots of questions today, guys, but I know that there is a video that Toby wants to show. So Toby, if you want to hit that go button, let's watch the video and then we can go back to questions.
Speaker on the ground. A blind woman roller skates at speed in an empty rink.
The rink is my passion. My arena of possibilities.
Title, degree, Maria's confidence to move. Same woman walks slowly, using a white cane to guide her.
It's where the fear of speed can't slow me down.
In the rink, the woman performs tricks on her skates.
Where I can be free.
She falls, gets up, falls again. She is sweating.
Free from the feeling that the world is not made for me.
Woman is in shower, then feeling her way around the bathroom. Reads Braille on degree deodorant and applies. The woman is now outside, training in the rain, then back in the rink, lacing her skates.
Try stopping
She skates away.
Degree has created the world's first adaptive deodorant, built with a diverse disability community, because there should be no limits when something moves us.
Title, degree, it won't let you down. Hashtag keep moving.
Okay, what a powerful video that was. You know, I actually got quite envious of her ability to balance on those skates. Not something somebody with dyspraxia can do very well at all, but what a powerful video. So I want to go and ask, Alex, what are your future plans for inclusive practice development? What does that mean? Inclusive practice development. Explain that terminology to us, please, and then your future plans.
So, inclusive practice development threw me off a little bit this morning as well, if I'm completely honest. So the way I've taken this question is how we are as a business moving towards making sure that the way we work and the way we behave is inclusive. I think it's really important to stress the fact that it's not that previous to this we haven't been, it's just having the thoughts and the mentality of making sure that everything we are doing is inclusive. I think the key area that I'm sort of working with Jenny through the Enable network, and how as a network we are building and crafting the strategy which the business is really listening to. We have 5 key pillars within the Enable network. That's awareness and education, internal culture and external partnerships, talent equity, brand and advertising equity, and then also IT and facilities. So within those 5 pillars, we're going to be then looking as sort of smaller sub-teams at how we can improve our ways of working, adjust our ways of working. It might be that actually we're already getting it right as well, and just looking at how we can tweak those, but also communicate it. Because one of the key things is it's all well and good that we're doing these things, but we have to also make sure that our employees and prospective employees in the future are aware of how we as a business can support people with disabilities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. There is one other question here. Can you give us a quick overview of how to apply to Unilever? What roles are available? And how to help your experience stand out, Mark? So this is all the kind of recruity stuff, right? This is really, really important to our candidates because they want to understand a little bit more about your recruitment and hiring practices. So over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, in terms of the way that we recruit, the best place to go to find out what we're recruiting is on unilever.com. We've got about 1,300 roles live on there globally at the moment, and almost 100 of those are UK based. So huge scope of different positions from, you know, what you would probably expect, like manufacturing, research and development, marketing. But then also some different and quite unique areas within tech, data and analytics, finance, HR. You know, we really do recruit across the entire spectrum. You know, we're not just a manufacturing company that people might perceive us as. And so, look, in terms of how we can help, you know, how we can say people can stand out, how to make your application, you know, visible to you know, to us and the rest of the talent team. So first and foremost, you know, we're trying to make our recruitment process as accessible as possible. So there's an invitation if you see a job that you're interested in and you're suitable for. There's a section on there, but you require a reasonable adjustment to put your application through. There's a link there for you to follow that and kind of communicate that within the application process. And then again, when it comes to, you know, any scheduling any interview or any assessment that we do for the roles that we have, we want to hear from you of how we can help you bring your best self to the interview. So if there's any adjustment that you want us to make, please let our talent team know and we can act on that for you. Some examples of what we've done in the past are giving people additional time for the interview, maybe giving people questions in advance, even kind of making sure as we move back to a more face-to-face world post-COVID, that we're having our interviews in an accessible room, for example, as well. So there's a variety of different practices that we've done to help you when you come to the interview. And then relating to kind of standing out and making sure that you're bringing your best self to the interview, we hope that by, you know, using those acceptable and inclusive practices that we're allowing you to do that. But there's an option on our application process for you to flag where you've seen the advert and where you've actually come from. If you click even break in that's going to highlight to our talent team of where you've heard about the vacancy, and that's something that we, you know, that we do want to take a look at and want to make sure that we're working in partnership with Even Break, the people that they're coaching and having an impact on as well.
That's really, really, really excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And can I say, for example, I'm applying to one of your positions. Can I at any stage ask for a reasonable adjustment? So whether it's at the application stage, whether it's at the interview stage, when can I ask for that?
At any stage in the process.
Fantastic. Any stage.
Yeah, any stage. So if you see our advert, as I said, there's a caption at the bottom of our adverts that kind of highlight what to follow and how to do it. And you know, I'm perfectly visible on LinkedIn and other social networks. If you've got a challenge, if it's not working, find me on LinkedIn, let me know, and I'll make sure that we that, you know, personally that I take an interest in what's going. We'll change our process moving forward, but we'll make sure that your application can come through as well. So that's a personal commitment from me.
Thank you. So what I've had to do there is just mute my video because I want to go to the Q&As. There seems to be quite a few Q&As here, guys. So I'd like to just to step you through them. Okay, so here's another question. I work with young adults with disabilities who are looking to gain employment in a workplace and are enrolled on a supported internship program. Okay. There's that, it's just a statement. So thank you for sharing that. That wasn't actually a question. Could there be an opportunity to work with yourselves or to gain some work experience opportunities within the Greater Manchester area for young adults with disabilities? Mark?
Yeah, so in terms of the Greater Manchester area, we've got a manufacturing site in Trafford Park. So that would be the local site for that individual. More than happy to kind of pick up directly and connect that person with our future careers team and see whether there's an opportunity to work together. So yes, there could be an internship, and yes, there could be an opportunity to work together. So yeah.
Okay. So how can I connect you? How can I connect? Is it Daljet? Who posted that?
Yeah, so I think there's an opportunity to type the answer in the Q&A. I'll give you my email address, Daljet. If you're still on the event, please reach out. I'll connect you with our future careers team and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. See, we're doing some connections and networkings already. Kelly Marsh has asked, I'm currently a mature student at uni studying law. I am partially sighted, mixed anxieties, depressive disorder, and symptoms of post-traumatic stress too. My mental health is managed really well though. My sight causes some issues, i.e. travelling to and from work, needing a larger screen. I shall be looking for graduate schemes this end of the year. What advice would you give on disclosing my disabilities and mental health issues, please? When in the application process, we sort of talked that a little bit earlier, Mark, didn't we? But I'm gonna ask you to maybe develop that a little.
Absolutely. So again, thinking about that individual and how they want to follow the application process. So first and foremost, our graduate centres run on an annual basis. And they're a mix generally of online assessments and then in-person interviews as well. So in terms of disclosing, at the actual application point in the process, there is an opportunity for you to disclose your disability at that point. And then if then selected for the next stage in the process, what I would suggest is linking in with the careers team, disclosing about what you would need as a reasonable adjustment through the application process, and then allowing the talent partner who you'd be working with to make that adjustment for the interview process that you follow. So I would absolutely advise as early as possible and as forthright as possible in terms of what you would need to bring your best self to the interview.
Yeah, Mark, can I ask too, because obviously this question was related to your graduate scheme. When do you open your graduate positions? When does that become live? Is it around this time of year?
So typically I think it runs from October to January, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. Again, maybe I can find an opportunity to kind of answer that in the Q&A once I can get the exact dates. But I know that we start to run our scheme at the beginning as the kind of school year starts back again in September, I feel, and then we make offers around the turn of the new year. But sure. I'll get the exact dates and put it in the chat.
Thank you. Hopefully that has been helpful and that's answered your question, Kelly. Here's one from Peter. Because I have a brain injury and then had to rehabilitate, then discover my confidence is extremely difficult. But I think that I am very conscious of having interviews and I feel a certain paranoia about expressing this. How would the best way of doing this? What's the best way of doing this? Should you be really open to others? It is a little scary. So I think here, Mark, this is about interviewing, and what Peter has said is really, really insightful. Because of his brain injury, he's become a little more conscious of how challenging this can be for him. And he gets a little bit paranoid and scared about the whole interview process. So what would you say to Peter?
So first and foremost, I know that this is where Even Break do some amazing work in terms of coaching and supporting individuals. So, just to give Even Break a plug here, I know that the people within the people that work within Even Break can hopefully support here as well. When it comes through to the interview and application process, it's hard to answer because depending on where Peter works and what his role is will depend on the actual application process that we run through. Now, potentially for some roles, we do more skill-based assessments than actually kind of face-to-face interviews. But what I'd absolutely say again is if Peter can raise that, if selected for an interview, talk about that with his talent partner. Talent partner can then look at what reasonable adjustments can be made to support Peter in that interview process. And again, it might be giving the questions in advance to help him feel more confident about what he's going to be answering in the interview. Whatever it may be, we can have that conversation and have an open discussion, and then look to put that into practice to again enable him to bring his best self to the interview.
Great answer. So that's two fabulous solutions, Mark. So Peter, feel free to reach out to some even break coaches who may be able to help you build your confidence, do some mock interviews, and help you not feel as scared or as anxious about going into that interview. But also equally, you can hear that Mark has suggested and highlighted ways in which you may be also supported through this process if offered an opportunity to interview with Unilever. So thank you very much for that. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. What I wanted to do now is just ask Jenny, Mark and Alex, any final words?
I just wanted to add a quick comment to Peter's question, actually, because I think what he raised about confidence is a really important point, and it's something that I know I really struggled with when I acquired my disability. I suddenly found my life felt very different, and I lost a lot of confidence. So I would echo what Mark was saying about really using the coaches and support that are there, because I think that really then gives you that confidence to actually go into that process, and don't be afraid to ask, I think would be my perception. If you do feel a reasonable adjustment would help, I think that alleviates some of that sort of underlying. And then I think, as Mark said, you're more likely to bring your true self, and that's what we want when people are applying, or I'm meeting, students and that. I just want them to be as relaxed and confident as they could. But I think it's really important you raise it, Peter, because I think it's something a lot of people with disabilities experience. And like I say, Even Break is a great organisation, so really make use of them to help you, support you in that as well.
Jenny, thank you. And for anybody who does want to reach out for our services, on the Even Break site, there is a resource section where you can actually have a chat. There's a chat box, but there's also an opportunity for you to request some coaching if you just go along to our Hive site that sits at the very end of the Even Break site. So that's www.evenbreak.co.uk. Is there anything you want to add, Mark?
No, just a big thank you to yourself, Rosa, for hosting, and to Mohammed for setting this up and putting everything together behind the scenes, and for everyone who's attended. Really appreciate everyone's interactiveness and involvement. So yeah, thank you to everyone.
Thank you. You're most welcome, Mark. Alex, what about you?
No, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me and allowing us to share all of our experiences with you all.
And thank you for sharing each of your individual experiences. This has been a really rather a different webinar, a very enjoyable one today. And I want to thank everyone for joining us, for your interactivity, and for those really invaluable questions that you've asked us. So thank you. This is my last time hosting Meet the Employer. We will have the fabulous Relly, who will be joining you next time. I will be continuing to deliver some career webinars, and we do have workshops. The next one is called Career Evolution and Personal Growth. It is an intimate workshop that will be delivered by Caroline. And Caroline is looking at ways of how to help you grow and discover more about getting your job search edge. It says your career path will build on everything you've done in your career so far. It's an interactive workshop, so feel free to join that. That's on March the 24th, 12 to 1 o'clock with Caroline. It's a personal growth and job search workshop. Then I will be delivering a webinar at the end of March, how to market your skills and strengths as a disabled candidate, because we talked about some of the fabulous strengths here today. So feel free to join those. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. What a fabulous webinar, and thanks to Unilever. Bye, guys.